Have you ever found yourself surrounded by people, yet feeling completely unseen? You give your time, your trust, your energy, only to be met with silence, judgment, or betrayal. If any of this sounds familiar, it may be time to pause and ask one of life's most powerful questions. Am I truly being valued or merely being used? Too often we allow people into our lives who don't deserve access to our hearts. They show up when it's easy, disappear when it's hard, and act like your worth is negotiable. But here's a truth you must never forget. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It's reflected in how you allow yourself to be treated. And that's what this video is all about. Today, we'll uncover the subtle signs that someone doesn't truly value you, signs that often go unnoticed until they've already drained your spirit. We'll explore 4 major behaviors: disrespect and betrayal, emotional ghosting, self-centeredness, and absence in times of need. Through each, we'll not only examine what these patterns look like, we'll also show you how to respond with courage, wisdom, and dignity. You'll hear the timeless lessons of Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus woven throughout this journey, because their insights into human behavior and emotional resilience are more relevant today than ever before. You'll also hear real-world stories, historical examples, and deeply personal reflections designed to help you build stronger boundaries, elevate your standards, and protect your peace. So ask yourself right now, who have I let too close? Who drains me instead of strengthens me? And am I brave enough to start choosing myself, not out of bitterness, but out of love? If you're ready to stop shrinking for others, to stop settling for relationships that dishonor your soul, then this video is for you. Let's reclaim your time, your trust, and your energy. Let's build the kind of inner strength that no one can take away from you, not with words, not with silence, not with betrayal. Because when you begin to value yourself, the world begins to reflect that value back to you, and that transformation starts right here. Number 1, disrespect and betrayal. Disrespect and betrayal often arrive when we least expect them, like sudden storms that disturb what once felt like calm and certainty. They catch us off guard, not because we were naive, but because we trusted. And trust, once broken, leaves a wound deeper than most physical pain. Consider the moment you open up about a long-held dream, sharing a vulnerable hope with someone you love, only to hear them scoff or dismiss it. That single comment, spoken in seconds, can echo for years. It's not just a lack of support, it's a subtle dismantling of your inner foundation. Disrespect often wears this mask of casual indifference, and in its silence, it speaks volumes. Betrayal, on the other hand, is loud in its impact, even if quiet in delivery. Think of a moment when you shared a secret, something deeply personal, with someone you believed had your best interests at heart, only to find that same secret passed around like idle gossip. The betrayal isn't in the words, it's in the broken bond, the shattered sense of safety. Suddenly you begin questioning not only that person's loyalty, but everyone's. Trust becomes harder to give. You become guarded, perhaps even bitter. And this isn't just your story. It's a story humanity has lived through for thousands of years. From Brutus betraying Caesar to historic alliances falling apart over greed or ego, these moments remind us that betrayal is part of the human condition. But just as common is the strength to rise above it. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that we must not expect the world to be just, only that we respond to it with justice. That wisdom is as relevant today as ever. We can't control the actions of others, but we can control our response. And that response determines whether we spiral into resentment or rise into clarity. Holding on to anger and resentment after betrayal is like willingly carrying a boulder everywhere you go. Every step, every interaction, every future relationship becomes harder, not because of others, but because of the weight you haven't set down. Forgiveness doesn't mean the betrayal was okay. It doesn't mean you're weak. Forgiveness means you are choosing yourself. You are choosing peace over poison. Imagine finally letting go of that heavy stone. You stand taller, you walk freer, you breathe deeper. That is the gift you give to yourself when you forgive, not for them, but for you. But let's talk about the subtleties. Disrespect doesn't always arrive with a slap in the face. Sometimes it's buried in a joke, a friend constantly teasing you, always targeting your insecurities while pretending it's all in good fun. But over time, these tiny stings add up. Like cracks in a seemingly solid wall, each one weakens the whole structure. Or perhaps it's a family member who masks criticism under the guise of just trying to help. It doesn't feel like support, it feels like judgment. These aren't isolated comments, they are quiet erosions of your confidence. Betrayal, in contrast, often comes with unmistakable force. Picture pouring months of effort into a project, fueled by passion and late nights, only to see someone close to you present your work as their own. The rage, the heartbreak, the disbelief. You trusted them, collaborated with them, and they took advantage of your openness. That kind of emotional robbery hits hard, and it can shake your sense of identity, because your work wasn't just a task, it was a piece of you. The consequences of disrespect and betrayal extend far beyond the moments they happen. They create emotional landmines. When someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, it breeds anxiety, like living in a home with broken locks, always waiting for the next intrusion. Betrayal does more than hurt, it scars. It plants seeds of mistrust that grow silently, making it hard to open up again. You might start questioning everyone's motives. The world starts to feel less safe. And yet Stoicism teaches us this vital truth. You are never powerless. Even in the aftermath of betrayal, you have agency. You can reclaim your autonomy piece by piece. It starts with boundaries, not walls, but gates, clear, deliberate, and firm. If someone crosses a line, speak up. If they mock your dreams or disregard your values, let them know it's not acceptable. And if they keep doing it, you don't owe them your presence. Distance is sometimes the greatest form of self-respect. There's a phrase worth remembering. Silence is often interpreted as consent. If someone repeatedly violates your peace and you say nothing, they may believe it's okay. But it's not. Your silence should never be mistaken for approval. And that's why some relationships need to end. Not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. Some connections, like dying flowers, have simply run their course. Keeping them around only prolongs the decay. Letting go might be painful, but it's powerful. It's an act of emotional decluttering. Imagine a room so filled with junk you can't walk freely. Now picture cleaning it out, removing what no longer serves you. Suddenly, there's space for things that bring joy, beauty, and peace. That's what letting go does. It creates room for new, healthier connections to grow. Building healthy relationships starts with a mindset of self-respect. Picture yourself as a vibrant, flourishing garden. Disrespect and betrayal are weeds. They choke your growth and drain your energy. But the people who water your spirit, who offer encouragement and celebrate your victories, those are your sun and rain. Surround yourself with those people. They may be few, but they are worth everything. Choose to be with those who value your presence, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Life becomes exponentially more beautiful when you walk alongside people who genuinely see and appreciate you. By honoring your boundaries, you build a space where love and trust can take root and thrive. And always remember this. Walking away from something that makes you feel small isn't weakness. It's wisdom. You're not abandoning the other person. You're returning to yourself. And that, above all, is the path to true inner peace. Number 2. The ghost in communication. Have you ever poured your heart into a message, only to receive nothing in return? No response, no acknowledgement, just silence. It's a silence that echoes louder than words ever could. You replay the message in your mind, wondering if you said too much or not enough. You check your phone again and again and again, but still, nothing. That deep, gnawing emptiness, that's what we call ghosting. And it's more than a lack of reply. It's a reflection of someone's priorities, emotional maturity, and how much or how little they value your presence. When someone you care about suddenly disappears from your life without explanation, it feels like shouting into an abyss. And the longer the silence stretches, the louder the questions become. Did I do something wrong? Are they okay? Was our connection even real? Ghosting creates a spiral of confusion and self-doubt. But here's the truth. The silence isn't your fault. It's their decision. And that decision reveals everything. Communication is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Not just words, but shared understanding, emotional presence, and mutual respect. When someone repeatedly ghosts you, When your messages go unread, your calls unanswered, your efforts unreciprocated, they are silently telling you that connection is not their priority. And while that may hurt, it also gives you clarity. You cannot force someone to value what they are not ready to receive. The pain of ghosting runs deeper than the absence of a reply. It touches your identity. It makes you question your worth. But ask yourself, why should someone's avoidance define my value? The answer is, it shouldn't. Their silence reflects them, not you. It shows their discomfort with confrontation, their fear of vulnerability, or their inability to hold space for someone else's emotions. And if that's what they're offering, do you truly want to keep knocking on that closed door? In a world where we can connect in an instant, being ignored is no longer about technology. It's about emotional investment. When someone chooses to ghost, they're choosing the path of least resistance over the path of courage. They're avoiding discomfort at the cost of your clarity. And the longer you wait for them to return, the more you abandon yourself in the process. Let's go deeper. Ghosting isn't always about cruelty. Sometimes it's rooted in fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of hurting someone's feelings, or fear of exposing their own vulnerabilities. But intentions don't erase impact. Whether it's rooted in fear or indifference, the result is the same. You feel abandoned. And abandonment leaves a mark. It lingers in the way you approach future relationships. It makes you hesitate before opening up again. It teaches you to expect silence even when you deserve presence. So how do you recover from ghosting? You start by reclaiming your voice. You stop waiting for someone else to give you closure. You remind yourself that you deserve people who choose communication over avoidance, honesty over comfort, respect over silence. The right people won't leave you wondering where you stand. They'll stand beside you. From a Stoic perspective, ghosting is a test of your inner strength. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." When someone ghosts you, the event is neutral. It's your interpretation that causes suffering, your belief that you were unworthy of a response, or that you must have done something wrong. But what if you shifted that interpretation? What if you saw their silence not as a rejection, but as redirection? What if their absence created space for someone better to arrive? Think about it. Would you rather be ignored by someone inconsistent or embraced by someone intentional? Every unanswered message is a filter. Every silence clears the way for clarity. You are not meant to chase people into conversations. You are meant to connect with those who see you, hear you, and value you. And here's something important. Don't let someone's silence make you silent. Don't let it shut down your capacity for connection. Instead, let it sharpen your discernment. Learn to distinguish between those who are temporarily distracted and those who are habitually dismissive. One deserves patience, the other deserves distance. Ghosting is also a sign of a cultural shift. In an age of instant messaging and disappearing stories, we've come to devalue long-term connection. We swipe, scroll, and sometimes forget that real people exist on the other side of the screen. But just because ghosting has become common doesn't mean it should be accepted. Respect is timeless. Consideration should never go out of style. So if you've been ghosted, don't take it personally. Take it seriously. Let it reveal the truth of the relationship. Let it show you who is truly invested and who is merely present for convenience. And most importantly, let it be a reminder. You are worthy of conversations that honor your presence, not diminish it. When someone ghosts you, it's not the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of your awakening. An awakening to your standards, your strength, and your right to be treated with consistency. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be chosen. You deserve to be in relationships where communication flows, not where you're left in the dark begging for breadcrumbs. In the end, ghosting doesn't just reveal who they are, it reveals who you are. Are you someone who will shrink in the face of rejection, or someone who will rise in the name of self-worth? The answer is already within you. All that's left is to walk forward, silent no more. Number 3. The center of attention. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation that somehow, no matter how it starts, always ends up being about the other person? You try to share something personal, an achievement, a struggle, a story, and before you know it, the spotlight has shifted back to them. Again, every dialogue becomes their monologue. Every shared moment becomes their stage. This behavior, often dismissed as confidence or charisma, can reveal something much deeper. A self-centered pattern that leaves little room for others to feel seen or heard. When someone constantly craves to be the center of attention, it's not just a personality quirk. It's often a reflection of an inner void, a need to be validated, applauded, or admired so intensely that they hijack every interaction to feed it. These individuals may not even realize they're doing it, but the result is unmistakable. The people around them begin to feel invisible. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that imbalance, you know how draining it can be. It's like speaking into a mirror that only reflects their voice. So, why does this matter? Because attention, like trust, is a resource. And when one person consistently takes more than their share, the relationship becomes lopsided. In Stoic philosophy, balance and harmony are essential. The Stoics taught that virtue lies in mutual respect, in listening and understanding. But when someone dominates every space with their own narrative, that harmony is shattered. Conversation becomes performance, presence becomes possession, and connection becomes competition. Let's look at this more closely. In social settings, the self-absorbed person often redirects every topic back to themselves. If you're talking about your new job, they've already done it. Better. If you're struggling, their struggle is somehow more dramatic. It's not that they don't care, it's that they can't bear to not be the focus. Over time, this kind of behavior erodes the foundation of the relationship. You start to feel like an extra in someone else's story, useful only as a prop in their spotlight. This pattern isn't limited to friendships or family. In professional environments, self-centered behavior can be even more destructive. You may encounter a colleague who always takes credit, even for collaborative work. They position themselves as the hero of every project, while quietly minimizing everyone else's contribution. The damage isn't just emotional, it's structural. Teams break down, morale drops, trust fades, and soon people stop collaborating altogether because the reward isn't worth the cost. In romantic relationships, this behavior can be especially painful. When one partner is constantly centering themselves, whether in victories or in problems, it leaves the other partner emotionally starving. Relationships thrive on mutual support, not one-sided validation. When your thoughts, needs, or feelings are constantly overshadowed by someone else's need for attention, you begin to question whether your voice matters at all. So where does this behavior come from? Psychologically, it often begins in childhood. Some people were raised in environments where they were either excessively praised or chronically ignored. Either way, they learned that attention was currency, and they had to either earn it or demand it. As adults, they carry that need into every interaction, often unaware that their hunger for validation comes at the expense of deeper connection. From a Stoic lens, this is where self-reflection becomes essential. Epictetus wrote, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." Likewise, someone's constant need for attention is not your fault, but your response to it is your responsibility. The key is not to resent them, but to protect your energy. Recognize the behavior and ask yourself, is this relationship a dialogue or a one-man show? This doesn't mean you must cut off every self-centered person in your life, but it does mean you need boundaries. Gently redirect conversations. Create space for your own voice. Let them know, tactfully, that connection is a two-way street. And if they resist, or if they continue to dominate every moment, it's okay to step back. Not every relationship deserves equal energy. And sometimes loving yourself means limiting the access others have to your time and emotional bandwidth. It's also important to recognize the emotional toll this can take on you. When you're constantly in the shadow of someone else's spotlight, you can begin to shrink. You doubt your value. You stay quiet to keep the peace. You feel drained even after short interactions. But remember, you are not meant to play small just to make someone else feel big. You are not here to be someone's audience. You are here to be your own advocate. Empathy is important. Yes, some people crave attention because they're hurting. But empathy should never require self-erasure. You can be kind without being silent. You can understand their pain without abandoning your own needs. Set boundaries, speak up, share the floor, and if they still won't share it with you, walk away from the stage altogether. Ironically, people who are obsessed with attention often miss the real opportunity to connect, to listen, to witness another human's story with the same care they expect for their own. That's where real growth happens, not in monologues, but in mutual understanding, and that's the type of relationship you deserve. So here's your reminder, you are not here to orbit around someone else's world. You have your own gravity, You have your own story, and that story deserves to be told, respected, and celebrated. Let your presence speak as loudly as their performance. And if the stage is too crowded for you to stand tall, then it's time to build your own. Because in the end, the loudest voices aren't always the most valuable. It's the ones who listen, who uplift, who make space for others. Those are the voices that echo long after the spotlight fades. Number 4. Absence in times of need. There's a special kind of clarity that arrives in your darkest moments. It's not just about what happens to you, it's about who shows up. In times of struggle, loss, or uncertainty, the people around you reveal their true colors, not through words, but through presence. And sometimes, the silence you receive in your hour of need speaks louder than 1,000 conversations ever could. Have you ever faced a personal crisis, a health scare, a heartbreak, a dream falling apart, and looked around only to find that the people you expected to be there weren't? Their absence isn't always dramatic. It might be a missed call, a text left unanswered, or a promise to check in that never came. And in that quiet void, you begin to wonder, was I ever really important to them? Or was I just convenient when things were easy? We often talk about love, friendship, and loyalty, but these things are truly tested not when life is smooth, but when it breaks. A friend who celebrates with you is wonderful, but a friend who stands beside you while the world is falling apart, that's rare, that's real. And that's the kind of relationship that deserves your energy. Absence in times of need is not just painful, it's revealing. It strips away illusion. It shows you which relationships are grounded in depth and which were built on shallow convenience. The Stoics understood this well. They believed that hardship is not something to avoid, it's something that reveals. As Seneca said, misfortune is virtue's opportunity. In the same way, misfortune is also truth's opportunity, because it reveals who's truly with you. But let's be honest. Being left alone when you needed someone most can cut deep. It shakes your trust in others. It even makes you question your judgment. You might wonder if your expectations were too high or if your needs were too much, but they weren't. It's not too much to expect someone who claims to care about you to show up when it counts. It's not too much to want presence, empathy, and support when you're hurting. That's not neediness, that's human connection. And wanting that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Sometimes people are absent because they're overwhelmed. Sometimes they simply don't know how to handle other people's pain. And other times, more often than we'd like to admit, it's because they don't prioritize the relationship as much as you do. Whatever the reason, the impact is real. When you're left alone in your struggle, it doesn't just hurt. It changes how you show up in future relationships. You become more guarded. You give less. You stop expecting others to stay because too many have left. But here's the turning point. You don't have to let someone else's absence define your worth. Their lack of support doesn't mean you are unworthy of support. It just means you were giving energy to someone who didn't have the emotional capacity or willingness to reciprocate. That's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their limitation. And even in that disappointment, you still hold power. You have the power to shift, to adjust your circle, to invest more in those who are consistently present, not just occasionally available. Because presence isn't just about showing up physically, it's about emotional presence. It's about checking in, offering time, being there without being asked. True relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, are built in these moments of mutual support. When you're struggling and someone says, "I don't have the answers, but I'm here," that's priceless. That's the kind of presence that binds people together, that builds trust and deepens love. Nowhere is this more clear than in professional environments. You may have noticed during high-pressure projects or personal difficulties, certain colleagues shine while others disappear. Some step in, not because they have to, but because they believe in shared goals and collective strength. Others hide, avoiding discomfort, leaving the weight to fall on those who care. And when it happens, it doesn't just affect the task, it affects the trust. It leaves a mark on the team. And over time, you learn who you can rely on and who you can't. The key then is awareness. Pay attention to the patterns. Who checks in on you when you're quiet? Who reaches out without needing anything in return? Who's there not just when you're rising, but when you're breaking? These are the people who deserve your loyalty. And sometimes the painful silence of others helps you hear those voices more clearly. From a Stoic perspective, this awareness is powerful. It allows you to detach from the emotional chaos of disappointment and see things as they truly are. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people will fail to meet our expectations, and we should not be surprised. That doesn't mean we become cold. It means we stop confusing illusion for truth. We learn to love wisely, to trust consciously, and to give generously, but only where it is respected and returned. So if someone has been absent in your time of need, allow yourself to feel the pain, but don't stay in it. Let it teach you. Let it clarify who belongs in your inner circle. Let it inspire you to show up even more fully for others because you know how much it matters. And most importantly, let it reaffirm this truth. Your worth is not defined by who walks away. It's strengthened by how you rise, even when you stand alone. Every time you survive without someone you thought you needed, you become stronger. Every time you choose to honor yourself over begging for someone's attention, you reclaim power. And every time you walk away from relationships that disappoint you repeatedly, you make room for the ones that won't. Because absence in times of need is a lesson, a hard one, but also a necessary one. It teaches you to surround yourself with people who lift when things get heavy, who show up not just for your celebrations, but for your scars, who sit beside you in the silence, not out of obligation, but out of love. Those people exist, and you deserve to find them. Just don't waste your energy waiting on those who've already shown you they're unwilling to stay. Now that we've walked through these 4 behaviors, disrespect and betrayal, emotional ghosting, self-centeredness, and absence in times of need, one thing becomes crystal clear. The way people treat you is never a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their awareness, their capacity, and their values. But how you respond, that defines your self-worth. Your value was never meant to be negotiated. It's not something someone else gets to determine. It's something you carry within you, quietly, confidently, like a flame that doesn't need to shout to be seen. The moment you recognize that, everything begins to change. You stop begging for clarity. You stop chasing half-hearted connections. And you start living with intention, choosing relationships that reflect the same level of care and commitment you bring to the table. But awareness is only the first step. From here, you must act. That might mean setting firmer boundaries. It might mean letting go of relationships that have run their course. And yes, it might mean walking away from people you once loved, because love without respect is not love that sustains you. This process is not about anger. It's about alignment. It's about deciding that you will no longer make room for behavior that dims your light, silences your voice, or disrespects your heart. Because you've been through too much, grown too far, and seen too clearly to pretend that bare minimum effort is good enough. And that choice, to protect your peace, to honor your energy, is not selfish. It's sacred. The Stoics taught us that the quality of our lives depends not on external events, but on the way we respond to them, and that includes how we respond to the people in our lives. When someone shows you through their actions or their silence that they do not value you, believe them. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with calm clarity. The kind that says, "Thank you for revealing who you are. Now I know where to place you in my life, or whether to place you there at all." You have the right to choose differently now, to stop accepting the bare minimum, to stop over-explaining your needs, to stop sacrificing your peace just to be accepted by people who never intended to understand you in the first place. You are not here to convince people of your worth. You are here to express it, boldly, kindly, and without apology. Let this video be your reminder. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve presence. You deserve consistency. You deserve people who listen, who care, who show up not only when it's easy, but when it's hard. These are not luxuries. They are the basics of a relationship rooted in respect. So from this point on, commit to choosing yourself. Let go of the pain without letting go of the lesson. Elevate your standards without lowering your heart. And trust that the right people, those who see you, hear you, value you, will rise to meet you where you stand. Thank you for walking through this journey with me today. If something in this video spoke to you, if it helped you feel seen or stronger, let us know in the comments below. And if you're ready to keep building a life rooted in wisdom, courage, and clarity, make sure to subscribe, because here we grow together. And until next time, stand tall, speak truth, and never settle for a love or a life that asks you to shrink.